In their interim report released in June, the panel identified 5 key challenges. 1, why is the NDIS an oasis in the desert? 2, what does reasonable and necessary supports mean? 3, why are there many more children on the NDIS than initially expected? 4, why aren't NDIS markets working? And 5, how do we ensure that the NDIS is sustainable? Let me quickly explain how the review found these key challenges facing the scheme. The review panel heard that when the NDIS works, it changes lives, literally hundreds of thousands of lives for the better. But it could work more transparently, more equitably, and more consistently. The review heard about the erosion of non-NDIS disability support since the introduction of the scheme, turning it into the only lifeboat in the ocean. Now, the review recommends ways to fix this design flaw. We need to develop supports for people whose disability does not have a significant impact on their daily life or impact their daily functioning in the same way. Or people whose condition just doesn't require the same level of support. Or people who don't need individualised funding to meet their needs, or do not have the same level of need as those on the NDIS. These supports, crucially, would create a continuum, so there would not be such a focus on being in or out of the NDIS. The review raised concerns that in the past, the National Disability Insurance Agency changed what qualifies as reasonable and necessary without any changes to the legislation, rules or operating guidelines. These decisions have led to confusion and contest in courts and the inconsistency of outcomes for people with similar levels of need. The review found that the costs of the NDIS were growing much faster than anticipated, partly because it's being used as a cash cow by some service providers. It found that the scheme's participant profile differs from the expectations expressed in 2011. Almost half of the participants on the scheme are children. None of the actuaries back then saw this coming. Other differences include the fact that support for children and families doesn't align with best practice. More adult participants need some support in decision making. The scheme hasn't properly, consistently supported people with a psychosocial disability, and demand has not slowed as expected. Another key finding concerns the NDIS services marketplace. In short, the market is a lottery, it's failing. It works for some people, but there are serious issues with accessibility, equity, outcomes, quality, safety, fraud. I mean, there is a world of difference between living in Sydney or Melbourne, or living in northern Tasmania or Longreach or Maningrida. One size doesn't fit all when it comes to accessing services. So we must, in the interest of participants, put an end to the simple acceptance that a laissez-faire approach to service delivery cures all. We need to shape and guide service delivery. We cannot have a 5-star scheme for the wealthy professional class and nothing for the poor. The review's final key finding was that the National Disability Insurance Agency had historically focused more on control than delivering supports participants needed to achieve long-time life goals. This changes.